that like, you don't have to be perfect, and we can find balance in that. We need to find what works for us.
Carnivore for the mental part of it. It's given me that space that I can delve into what my issues have been, the past baggage that I've hung on to. Hey, everybody, thank you for joining us today. I have Lily Kane with us, and I really wanted to kind of have a conversation about the mental health aspect of doing carnivore, low carb, keto kind of stuff, and the impacts it has. If you guys haven't watched, I'll put it in the description. She has an amazing, very personal video about, just her relationship with her mom growing up, anxiety and all that stuff. And a lot of you guys know myself, I've had like severe depression, like suicidal issues, severe anxiety and things like that. And I just kind of wanted to share the journey with you. So thank you for joining us, Lily, and being willing to talk about this, because this is kind of a hard conversation to have.
Of course. Well, thank you for having me. And I know it's going to help people. So even though it makes me feel not super comfortable, it's temporary.
Yes. I want to talk about your video you did. I know you said you just really hadn't talked much about it, over your channel and things like that. What motivated you to kind of open up to make that?
So I read a book called The Millionaire Messenger by Brennan Mashard, and that was almost 3 years ago. That was before I started my YouTube channel. And the book is basically about how we all have a story, and if you share it with people, it can seriously change people's lives. And so I knew that when I started my YouTube channel, I didn't want it to focus around like becoming emancipated and overcoming like abuse and alcoholism in the family. But I just knew that I had to put that message out there initially, just so people could know who I was. So I actually made that video. That was my first YouTube video. But since then, it's been a couple years, so people haven't really watched the old videos. And nowadays, I work with people one-on-one, and I have to do coaching calls, and people will say to me, oh, well, I know you can't understand this because I have anxiety and your life's perfect. Or like, I know just because you're super happy, you're privileged, you're wealthy, you have a loving life, you have all this great family. And I had just got married as well. So people saw like someone walk me down the aisle, and it just like all the pieces came into the picture where I was like, okay, it's time again where I share that story again, because I know that there are people who can benefit from it, and also just make me a real person. Because a lot of people see my videos and I'm just super smiley and bubbly and everything's happy hunky dory, and it is, but there were some not great times the first 16 years of my life.
Yeah. Would you mind just like kind of quickly kind of sharing that for the people who haven't seen that video?
So I grew up in San Diego, California, and my mom and dad they met out of their addiction for drugs and alcohol. And so I was very young when they got divorced. So I don't know if I was 3 or 4 or whatnot, but they got divorced. And then my mom kind of made it where it was really hard for my dad to actually come and see us, because she would tell us things about him where I don't really remember what it was, but she made us really afraid of him, where he would show up to our school with birthday presents or Christmas gifts, and we would hide and tell the teacher to call the police on him, and we would just go underneath the desks and stuff. So eventually, between my dad having to deal with my mom, who was not as easy to be around, and then trying to see his kids who don't even want to see him, eventually he just stopped coming around. And then at that time too, my mom met a man named John, and he started becoming more of like our dad figure. And so he eventually saw how my mom would put on a good front when they first met, but then eventually she became back to her alcoholic ways. And so he ended up staying in that relationship with her longer than he would have if it weren't for my sister and I, because he just felt really bad for us, knowing that like if he wasn't there, then there were going to be other men or other like toxic situations going on. And so like we would beg him, please don't leave us, like please stay with our mom. But eventually, once they officially did break up, my mom would let my sister and I stay with him on the weekends, and during the week we would stay with my mom. And she just always had different male figures in the house, different boyfriends who were usually abusive verbally and physically. There were like times of rape. Like you're just not in a great situation when someone's an alcoholic. So the police were over at our house all the time, and it was just not a great life. Like you would just be a little kid and you don't know what's going on or why the police are there, and you'd cry yourself to sleep at night. And then eventually my mom, when I was 13, evicted my sister and I. I don't know how you evict your kids at 13, but then when I was 16, we officially did move out, because we had to lie to her, but we chose to lie to her so that way we could have John in our life. And my mom essentially wouldn't allow us to spend time with John if he had a girlfriend. And so we had to like be secretive about that. And then eventually he got married and my mom found out and said, that's it. She didn't want to see my sister and I ever again, which was honestly the best probably thing that could have ever happened. As much as that sounds like ironic that like I don't have a mom and dad, but to think like at this point, if I were to have my mom, I don't think I would have my husband who I currently have, because just my whole life would have been different. I got to go to school for free in college and got so many just amazing opportunities once I didn't have her toxicity in my life.
Have you been in any kind of communication since then with her?
No, when I was 16, that was pretty much the last time we talked. And I did try reaching out to her because I just want everyone to be happy still to this day. And she has 3 sisters. So I have 3 aunts, and she doesn't talk to any of them either. It was something where I was growing up. One would try to offer her to go to AA. Nope, I'm not talking to that sister anymore. And then one would reach out trying to help her with something else. So they were always trying to help her, where eventually over the years they were being booted out. So then I knew when one would reach out again, trying to love on my mom and trying to help her, she would just get more drunk and more abusive. And so I know that like, if I were to reach out to her today, it would just be the same situation where she's just going to go drink more and be more toxic to herself. So I did reach out to her for a year after we didn't talk, but she never responded, never replied. So I said, okay, I know how this goes because I've seen it over the years.
That is a very hard and difficult childhood to go through, it sounds like. I mean, like, I can't imagine. And to be honest, you have turned out, it seems like, an amazing, sweet, kind person. And that is just amazing, honestly. At what point did you recognize like anxiety and stuff had developed? Like, did you notice in your 20s and things, like early 20s, anxiety, depression, just from all of this happening?
So the irony is, when I was younger, it was just normal. Like that was just life. And I didn't really know anything different. Like I knew it wasn't normal where I was growing up in, but I didn't have anything else to compare it to. So it was actually not until, like, people always thought I was super happy, hunky dory in high school and growing up, but it wasn't until I was actually in college where that's where I started having more like depressive thoughts, particularly just because I wanted so badly for a man to love me. So I just like cycled through boys every week. There's a new guy. Please love me. Take me on a date. Do you need me to kiss you, or do you need me to not talk to you, or should I give him your phone? Like trying to figure out what do they need me to do? I'll do whatever it is that you want me to do. Play games, not so. Like after my freshman year of college, I saw like people who, like, you just can't help but compare. So I'd be like, why did they get in a relationship but I didn't? Or how come the guy who I was talking to went for her? Like it just turned into a thing where I just couldn't understand why nobody wanted to be with me. And then so that's where I found like most depression, I think, is like my senior or my freshman year of college. I was really not happy by the end of it. And like I was like, I'm gonna run in front of this car. Because you can imagine like not having parents who love, well, I'm sure they love me in a weird way, but they didn't show it. So like to not have the family and then to like not also have other random people not give me the love was pretty tough. But I actually didn't think I had anxiety or anything like that until about a year ago. Like, and I'm super happy and I have a great life now. But it was because I was reading a book. It's called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Dr. Joe Dispenza. And in that book, he lists a bunch of words. And I was just reading this book because I was like, oh, I just like positive mindset thinking, but I'm not going through a divorce. I'm not having struggles in my life. I don't have a lost dog. And so I'm reading these words and he says to pick one of the words that you're most like. And I'm like, nope, I'm not this, I'm not that. And I see the word anxiety. And I go, oh, you know what? I think I have anxiety. I'm a perfectionist. I keep in my head just running through the day in my head, having conversations over and over again. And then I started noticing little tendencies. Oh, I ripped the skin off my fingernails today. Oh, I just do little habits that I didn't know at the time were anxiety. And when I told my husband, I was like, I think I have anxiety. He goes, duh, you talk super fast and like you do all these things. You just can't tell an alcoholic you're an alcoholic. They need to figure it out themselves. So yes.
Yeah. Self-discovery is key. At the start of your carnivore journey, the depression and stuff, like how was it right before you started? And the question is, how did you find carnivore?
So I found carnivore through my husband, actually. He's 9 years older than me. So he had already done a plant-based diet and vegan and fruitarian, Mediterranean, paleo, all the everythings. So he had done keto prior to me knowing him.
What's fruitarian?
Fruitarian, he only ate fruit. Like he would sit down and eat a whole watermelon, 15 bananas, and then his second meal would be like 8 oranges. So he only ate.
Got it.
Um, so he doing a plant-based diet really messed up his gut, really messed up his skin. So he ended up finding keto and healed his gut. But then when I met him, I was eating my donuts and pancakes diet. So then I tried convincing him that was a great way to eat. And he ended up having his health conditions and autoimmune conditions and things with his gut issues come back. So he ended up saying one day, like, Lily, I just can't keep eating burritos and tacos. So I need to go back to eating a ketogenic diet because that was so healing for my gut. So he started doing that. And at the time I was like, oh, okay, so we're not having bread this week. Oh, okay, no rice this month. And so it just slowly started happening where, of course, I could go out to the grocery store and just buy those foods if I wanted to. He never forced me or told me I had to do this, but I always looked up to him because I loved sugar. And I always thought, why do I need sugar to be happy? How come I'm sitting here eating a spoonful of cookie dough while you're totally happy without it? So because I was just so inspired by him, I started slowly asking more questions. Oh, what's a lectin? What's a nightshade? And learning from him and slowly getting into keto and carnivore just because he was doing it for his gut health.
Did you notice in the beginning, like changes in your mood and stuff from going off the sugars and carbs and stuff to doing the keto carnivore?
My mood for sure, where I would have these peaks of energy and then the crash where I was taking a nap and I'm also going to fight you. And I had more irritability and I would like, I say like I always was crying when I would watch like not even a chick flick, just like watching a movie, start crying. But my menstrual cycle was a big thing too, that I was just not regular my whole life, like growing up, where I would skip a cycle, thought it was a good thing because, hey, I don't have to have a period. And then for the record, I did not have a parent or someone to teach me these things when I was younger. Okay. So then I regulated my cycle, less mood issues, irritability. It's hard to say the depressive thoughts thing because once I met my husband, I was just so happy. But the anxiety actually got worse the stricter I became carnivore. And so I did back in September, October, a no plants strict carnivore diet. Because back when I started sharing more about carnivore on the YouTube land, I was having some lemon water or some seasonings with my meats. And slowly over the time, there have been louder voices of like, no, you're not doing carnivore right, or you're going to feel amazing if you eliminate mustard. And so I decided, okay, I want to feel like Superman. I'm going to do a strict no plants, 100% pure carnivore diet. And that actually gave me anxiety because I felt like at that point, mustard for my personal health is not impacting me in a negative way. And maybe for somebody else, it brings back their arthritic pain or negatives with their health. But for myself, I was getting more anxiety thinking that you can't have mustard or you're going to die or that's toxic for you. So that's something, maybe for your audience is that like, you don't have to be perfect and we can find balance in that we need to find what works for us. And there's going to be lots of different information and people online who are going to tell you it's this way. No, it's this way. And it's your way.
Yeah, that's actually really well said because you are the only person in your body, and what works for one does not work for the other. Like there's plenty of people that they're like, oh, if I have dairy, they'll either overeat or, I gain weight. Well, I've gone a month without dairy. And actually I went through the same thing when we were going to do triple B&E this month. And like 2.5 weeks in, I'm like, oh my God, like I have this eye twitch. I'm feeling so stressful. And I realized what it was is I have chicken once a week, chicken wings. And it's like, that's like I don't want to call it a cheat meal because it's not, but that's like my special meal. And just having to like fit into this mold versus just doing carnivore, it stressed me out. Mm-hmm. And I have no problem with dairy. I don't have, that I know about, problems with the spices that I use and things like that. And finding what works for the individual is key. Because I have had people are like, you're not doing carnivore. I'm just like, Your version of perfect doesn't exist. And I think trying to aim for that is ridiculous because, as I said before, none of us are perfect. And why try to aim for something no human is ever going to achieve? And what, affects you may affect me or it doesn't. And you don't know till you try.
And it's kind of, I know that what we're doing on the internet is really, really changing people's lives, but at the same time, I know that we have a responsibility to not be confusing as possible. So like, for example, I've had videos where I have some blueberries or where I have something else. And then people are like, wait, so are blueberries carnivore? No, they're not. They're not from an animal. I don't mean to confuse you, but this is what's working for me. And I'm going to do this today. Maybe I'm not going to have blueberries tomorrow, but today I'm going to do that. And that's because I know for myself, we have like pros and cons. And I feel like most people don't stop to analyze, am I doing the pros and cons right now? So when Amanda reached out to me to come on this interview, was she like, okay, the pro is this, the con is, oh, you're a little crazy. But same thing as like when people reach for that pizza, in the moment, they're like, I'm in a social event, it's going to work well. And also it's going to taste good. And I'm just going to enjoy this pizza slice. But if you really stopped and you're like, okay, but tomorrow I'm going to feel like poop. It's going to make me eat something else I don't like. I'm going to have acne. I'm going to have inflammation. I'm going to have joint pain. So I think like when I weigh the pros and cons, like for myself, if I have blueberries, the pro may be it's refreshing. I just want to have a sweet taste right now and it's going to work for me. For somebody else, it's like, I'm going to binge eat. The sweet taste is going to make me go and have cake, or I'm going to have negatives. So I think like weighing the pros and cons for your individual self, and that can change each day. Like maybe today you don't do dairy. And then in a month from now, you're like, actually, there's way more pros for me today to do the dairy. But next month, there's not going to be pros for me to eat the dairy.
Yeah, it's being adaptive, I think. And I am not one for, even though you've probably had people say this to you too, but like people are binge eating, you go from one spectrum to the carnivores the other. And it's like, no, carnivore gives me a very tight guideline to follow, but it still to me is a guideline because, right, you can argue my cup of coffee, my spices are plants. Okay, yeah, I don't really care because they don't affect me, at least that I know about, but they don't affect me right now. And it is vital. As I said on our interview that we did just before, I had a huge mind shift of I want to try to like isolate what really works for me. And I've had people make comments about you're not eating enough. But as I called it, Scott, my husband finds it funny. I was like, I have plenty of Bank of Amanda deposits still. I was thinking about like, okay, I need to eat less because I need to use more of my fat cells. But that mindset stressed me out this entire week. Like I've just been so stressed. But I had this epiphany last night. It's like, okay, I need to view it from a different perspective. Instead of I can't have this or I need to have less, it's like I need to use what I have. So having a different perspective is key, but also knowing, I think a big thing, especially on YouTube, if somebody says they have the answer for you, like the answer, follow it to a T, it's a lie. Because we don't actually know what works until you've actually tried it yourself.
Absolutely. And even like you said too, I know the video we're doing is about more about like mindset and mental health, but people can see like Amanda still had a moment, this week. I just said I was picking my fingernails and ripping my skin off today. So like, we're not perfect. And I would love to say that the carnivore diet is going to completely solve all of your problems. And while it can absolutely help dramatically change people's lives, there's still going to be little tendencies. So if you start doing carnivore, if you start eating a different way and you're like, well, I still have some anxiety, so I must not be doing it right. Or I still have some depressive thoughts, so it's not working for me. Again, we're not saying it's going to completely eliminate everything, but it really, really can help. And I know for myself, like, I feel like I've been calmer where now, like in the heat of the moment when like tension's rising, like I have a husband, things happen where tension's rising. Now I'm able to stop and be like, oh, you know what? I bet if I say this, it's going to make him mad. I'm not going to do that. Actually, I'm going to love him instead. Whoa, I'm going to love this man right now, even though I don't like him right now. So I feel like I have been more calm where I can remove myself from the situation and like be the observer and like look down. Whereas before I was just so reactive.
I think doing the carnivore too, for me, like it's taken the pressure off. Like, how do I say this? If you had like just like a baseline kind of thing, it's like the bad diet, the standard American diet, just like pushed me 10 feet below ground. And it was so dark and it's such a bad place. Doing carnivore got me to that baseline, like, there is a sun. And then working on my mental health. And there's, bazillion different ways to do it. Like, going and talking to people. I found a lot of help in Jordan Peterson's book, The 12 Rules for Life. And we've actually read, if you haven't, Atomic Habits is, especially for anxiety. If you haven't read it, I love that book. It's really helped a lot. These kinds of things of being able to self-evaluate. Carnivore, for the mental part of it, it's given me that space that I can delve into what my issues have been, the past baggage that I've hung on to, because carnivore will not just poof, dissolve that. We all have baggage that we haven't dealt with, from whether it's childhood traumas, adult traumas, whatever it is. And you have to find the way to deal with it for yourself. But as I said, carnivore it allows that process to happen without the burdensome of all the physical maladies that come with eating.
That's a great point. I haven't even really pinpointed until now I'm talking to you, but that, like, when I was eating all these, sugars and all the, my blood sugars are going crazy, and my mood's all over the place. I couldn't even begin to think about, hey, maybe I should work on this. Whereas now, like, I'm chill. So now I'm able to think, okay, now where can I work in these different areas of my life? Whereas before I was like, I can't work on anything. I'm all over the place.
Yeah. Being overwhelmed, like, just life itself became overwhelming, because for me, it was the depression and the anxiety. My anxiety got so bad, I would not leave the house for months at a time. My poor husband, like, had to do all the grocery shopping and stuff. And I just would not leave the house. And it's just like, I would have panic attacks where I remember, like, getting on my hands and knees and, like, just hyperventilating. And it removed all of that. It didn't remove the triggers for the anxiety, but what it removed is, like, that hyper reaction to the events that happened. And I think that's kind of what you're saying too, is like just getting that out of the way so you can look at things more clearly.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. It's been an amazing thing. Now, did you ever take any antidepressants, anything for, I know you said the anxiety you just kind of discovered recently, but have you ever taken anything for that?
No, I think I was mostly just very sheltered to even know, like, to go to a doctor. To be honest, I didn't even go to the doctor or have health insurance growing up, so I didn't even know there were options.
Yeah. Wonder, because there's pros and cons to antidepressants. It would be really frowned upon now, but I was on antidepressants from the time I was like 12, or on and off them. But I'm actually at half a dose of what I had been taking, which is pretty good considering I'm 33 today, and we're talking 21 years and I've been on and off them. It makes me very curious, and actually really pleased, honestly, to see how well, I don't want to say coped, but just you've, like, I don't know how I would have gotten out of the situation you were in, because there's a lot of people who have really hard childhoods, and either parents or, like, I went through some childhood trauma that kind of led me to my binge eating and stuff like that. That, as terrible as these events are, they shape us into who we are. That was a big thing for my mental health, accepting all the trauma that I had gone through as a child and as an adult. That is who I am today. And do I like who I am today? Yes. So not that I have to like the events, but they are what molded me into who I was, or am, I should.
It's a corny thing to say, but I say, like, oh, after the storm, there's always a rainbow. You just have to look out for that and try to find the pot of gold. And it is true. Like, we're always going to have challenges in our life. Like, it's not over, but well, at least for myself, nowadays as an adult, like, if I have, like, a little bump in the road, I call them a little hurdle, it's just so much easier now that I have gone through, like, the hardest thing in my life. So now it's like, yeah, like you said, it makes you into the person who you are, where I feel like I'm just super strong or super compassionate and kind to people, because I know how much that really impacts everybody.
Yeah. Now, are you and Bryce wanting to have kids soon-ish?
This seems to be a popular question lately.
Well, you guys did just get married, and I actually love the fact that he's 9 years older than me, or 9 years older than you. But I don't know why. Older men just tend to be more mature. Sorry, boys.
He was, this is like a really side note, but he has his 3rd-degree black belt. So, like, he had to mature when he was really young. By the time I was born, he had a black belt. So, like, But yes, he's very mature, and I'm the very opposite, because I think I had to mature so much when I was younger that now I'm like, woohoo, let's just like have fun. And then he's like, all right, stop going into the closet and scaring me. But we are not planning on having kids anytime soon. We're actually trying to buy a home right now, and we just got a lot going on. So maybe within the next 5 to 10 years.
Literally, there's no rush. Scott's 50, and you got time, honestly. But men can be like 80 and have kids at this point anyway. So
Yeah.
do you think you guys will continue, like when you do eventually have kids, you'll raise them carnivore, keto, or whatever like that?
Yeah. So we will definitely raise them like animal based, I guess is what we're going to call it, because we're not perfect carnivores. But
It's actually a good way of saying animal based, because I mean, it is.
so I'm short. I'm 5'2". I grew up with like a jaw that,
You're taller than that, really.
and my jaw growing up, I had a very narrow jaw, so I had to have a retainer that would crank it open. Then my teeth were all messed up, where I had obviously braces, but then rubber bands and a headgear. Yep, and a foot brace. But I basically feel like I was very underdeveloped when I was growing up, and I think like raw milk and eating ground beef and eating eggs and having liver and having more nutrient dense foods, I would have been taller. I would have had less jaw problems. So yes, definitely we're going to make him into like a little macho, strong boy. He doesn't even know it yet, but yeah, we're going to make a super baby.
So funny. I was actually thinking this the other day. I mean, it may have no merit, but I'm like, because I was an average kid, like, I'm the youngest, and my middle sister, she's shorter than me, but I'm 5'5.5", because that half matters. Like, if I hadn't been overweight as a kid, would I have been taller? Like, I know that's a dumb question to ask, but it's like, gravity, weight, compressing the spine, probably not. But I'd like to think, yeah, I could have been like 5'7".
Yeah, eating nutrient dense foods, Bryce was very overweight when he was a kid, so he lost 50 pounds when he was 10. So he always says too, like, dang it, if I would have not eaten so much garbage as a kid, I would have been taller.
When you were a kid, I'm actually just curious about this. When you were a kid, like, what kind of meals did you eat?
Lots of top ramen, macaroni and cheese boxes, and peanut butter and jellies. So we were just super low income. My mom couldn't keep a job, so we grew up on food stamps, shopping at the 99-cent store. And I therefore was likely in a calorie deficit my whole entire life. It wasn't until I was in college where I finally got access to the all-you-can-eat buffet, where I finally got to like eat.
At any point, have you been like overweight? Like, not just like 10, 15 pounds, but I mean like overweight in any point in your life?
I met Bryce when I was 22. So I was a track and field athlete for 8 years. So I was even a collegiate track and field athlete. So I did gain weight while I was in college. But then once I graduated, I kept my little Krispy Kreme donut diet going, but I met Bryce and pretty much started low carb when I was 22, which I know is like, so many people say, if I only knew about this when I was younger. And even myself, I'm like, I wish I knew about this when I was younger, but I'm like, you know what? I'll take 22. That's good.
Yeah, heck yeah.
Had I kept doing what I was doing, I would have absolutely had more problems than I already had.
Yeah, because not being super, active all the time, doing track and field and things like that. Yeah, because people say that to me all the time. They're like, I wish I was, because I started this when I was 32, right? I was like, they're like, if I was your age, and I'm like, hopes and wishes, they're great, but we can't go back in time. I mean, even people in their 80s doing this. My mom has been visiting, and she's 5 foot. She's 5 foot. My mom's side, they're very short. And she's probably still has like 45 pounds to lose. But even at her age, she's 64. God, I hope you're not watching this, Mom, because I do not remember. Pretty sure she's 64. And she's just been doing excellent. She's been doing more carnivore now with us, and she's been here for the past 3.5 weeks. And even at that age, she's doing well. So I think there is no age too old to have an improvement.
Absolutely. And I know we were talking about KFC earlier, but he started his business when he was in his 70s, and then he became like a millionaire. So not even with diet, but even with success or relationships, and age is but a number.
Thank you for taking the time to talk to me. Where can people find you and reach you?
I'm on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok, Lily Kane.
And guys, I'll put that in the description and the link to her video we were talking about earlier, because it's an emotional watch, but it's a very good video to watch to understand that, it's very easy to see us on the other side of the camera, but life is not perfect for anybody. And, we still can come out on top. It just takes a lot of effort. So yeah. And my last question to you is, what is your favorite book for like self-improvement kind of things?
Well, only one? No. I guess
You
for
have
my,
a couple that are like your absolute favorite.
well, I have to go with Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins is really good. And then I think the Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself was powerful for myself, because it was like I just opened a can of worms and discovery for myself. But I've actually just read The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, and that was pretty awesome too.
Oh, sweet. I have not read that one. Actually, I haven't read any of those, so I'm going to have to, because I have Brain Energy on my list. We just finished Atomic Habits. We're reading Green Lights right now, and because I do a book club every Tuesday. And what else have we read? There's a handful of other ones. But if you haven't, Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules is just, I told Scott earlier, it's like almost like a slap in the face that you needed sometimes. Sometimes it's like warming, and then other times you're like, oh, I do that. It's a great book. It really is. Anyways, thank you again, Lily.